Warning, this guide features Strats. If the thumbnail and the title of the video weren't the giveaway, and any of you are doing different things for the different mechanics of this fight, this guide is explicitly going to focus just on what EU is doing in Party Finder right now. If you've come here looking for the NA strats, go to my channel, you're looking for a different video. Hi guys, and welcome to a Hector lecture guide to the fight M12S. This is Lindwurm. The fight begins with Arcadion Flame. This is an incredibly hard-hitting raid-wide, so mitigate it heavily. Afterwards, the boss will cast Replication, and we're going to see clones of the boss spawn at each of the cardinals. If you look at the enemy bar, you'll see that each of these clones is preparing a different attack. Two of them are preparing a Winged Scourge, which is Chronologically, either to the front and back or the sides of the ad. One of them is preparing Mighty Magic, which is two dark AOEs targeted at the nearest two players. And one of them is performing Top Tier Slam, in which they jump on the nearest player for what's meant to be a partner stack, fire-based. The problem with this, when the clones spawn down, they all look exactly the same. There's no way to tell who is loading which mechanic. Maybe they're loaded like this. Maybe they're loaded like this. The only thing that's in common is that the dark and the fire ad will always be opposite each other, and the two Chronologically ads will always be doing the same type of Chronologically. But since we don't know which one is which, we have to position to prepare for all possibilities. If we use these positions here, everybody is partnered with their role partner, and this is ensuring that nobody will die to the fire partner stack if they're targeted for it. We stand in these positions, and at most you need to do a slight adjust out of any cones coming your way. Afterwards, we need to know which ad did which attack, and the easiest one to spot is the fire ad, as it's the one that's not on a cardinal anymore. The dark ad is opposite them, and the other two are your Chronologically ads. Immediately, though, get behind the boss, as the boss is turned towards a random player and is preparing Snaking Kick. This is a front cleave, and you dodge it just by being behind the boss. Now, the clones are going to replicate. They'll split into two, and each clone is preparing the same mechanic that the original clone that they were copied from had inside of them. These clones are going to repeat their mechanic shortly, and so we need to bait the attacks from the fire and the dark clones. To do this, now's the time to check your debuff if you haven't already. If you have a dark vuln, you cannot get hit by dark, and so you're going to be baiting the fire clone partner stacks. Healers in range will take one, tanks or melees will take the other. If you have a fire vuln or nothing, since you don't have a dark vuln, you can bait the dark AOEs instead. Now, you know which clone you need to be looking for, which one you're going to bait shortly. Pick one of them and follow it carefully as they jump around. Did you manage to keep track of your clone? To help you with this, they always appear in these relative positions. One diagonal line will be fire, dark alternating, and the other diagonal line will be all Chronologically. From here, players need to go to their ad. Healers in range are going to take the far ads, and tanks and melees are going to take the near ads. If you have a dark vuln, you're going towards one of the fire ads. If you don't, you're going towards one of the dark ads. From here, how EU chooses to position for this in Party Finder depends on the type of Chronologically. Because these are vertical cleaves, if I overlay the AOEs, you can see the safe spots. When it's vertical, the healers in rage need to slide toward east and west. The tanks and melees are spreading out along north-south. These would be the positions you use. If the cleaves are horizontal instead, if I overlay the AOEs, instead, healers in range are going to spread towards north and south, and the tanks and melees are going to spread along the east-west line. What's catching on very quickly in EU Party Finder, though, is a slight variation on this called static or Braindead. For this, all you need to do is follow one clone. This works really great if you are in voice chat in a static, because one person can call the whole mechanic for the entire party. One person keeps track of the far dark clone. This is your new north. If you want to track the near fire clone instead, it's the same position. From here, we have set positions that we go to. Ranged without a dark vuln are going to go out group 1 left, group 2 right, and stand on the cardinal waymarks. Melees that don't have a dark vuln are going to go out group 1 left, group 2 right. You stand the black tiles and roughly max melee in these positions here. Range that do have a dark vuln are going to go out always relatively in this direction. So you can think of it as backwards and left if you're facing the boss. And finally, melees that don't have a dark vuln are going to take a couple steps forward towards the fire clone to ensure they don't clip anyone with their attack. If you're in these positions, you should already be dodging the Chronologically. You might have to do the tiniest adjustment out of it, but all of the attacks should be baited correctly. This is always going to be relative to that new north. However you resolve this, immediately afterwards get everybody tight behind the boss. This is because the boss is preparing double Sobat. This is a 3-part tank buster. The first hit is meant to be shared with a code tank, but because there's only 3 of these in the whole fight, and the first and third are far enough away from each other, any non-paladin can take this first one with invuln. Do it very late in the cast so it'll cover the final bit. The first hit will cleave entirely in front of the boss, and then the boss will spin around either 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, or not at all. Everyone needs to get behind the boss as there's a hidden snaking kick here. The tanks are near, though, because they need to immediately run out to bait some very large AOE tank busters. If main tank timed their invuln right, it will cover both this hit and the initial hit. Off tank will need to use cooldowns. Next up is a mechanic commonly referred to as Replication 2. The mechanic starts with a cast of staging, and we see figures spawn in 2 at a time, starting north-south and rotating clockwise. Shortly after these figures appear, they'll tether to random players, and after a few seconds, they will spawn clones of your players, all at set positions around the arena, facing middle. The boss will now cast Replication. Boss clones will spawn in. They're each going to telegraph a mechanic and tether to players, and this is now getting complicated, so let's bring it to the chalkboard. The first tethers are fixed. Wherever you're tethered to, that's where your clone is going to appear. You cannot change that. You just need to deal with it. The boss tethers, though, you can swap these at will. Go to whichever clone that you want, wiggle around it, and that tether should snap onto you. You can swap these mechanics to pick up whichever one you need. Shortly afterwards, these tethers will lock in place, and the mechanic will be transferred into you. You can now take this wherever you want to, or face it wherever you want to. After this, the mechanics will be transferred to your clones, and when reenactment goes off, these mechanics will be carried out relative to either where the clone is positioned or where it's facing. The possible mechanics you can get are either a Chrono Cleave from where you're facing or where your clone is facing, a giant defamation AOE, or a stack that's meant to be shared with 4 people. The trickiest one is the boss tether, which comes with a cast of Firefall Splash. Here the boss is going to jump on the player that they're tethered to, then aim a cleave at the 4 nearest players, before shooting a defamation at the furthest player. The goal of the strat that we use in Party Finder is to set up our clones like this. We want to pick up tethers so that our clones in these positions are loaded up with these mechanics. That will ensure that reenactment plays out exactly the same way every single time. To do so, we're going to set a light party priority system. Anybody whose clones appear in this position, you are acting light party 1. When you want to pick up a tether, you look northwest and counterclockwise to find your mechanic. Anybody with clones in these positions, you are acting light party 2. You're going to look north and clockwise to be able to find your mechanic. Here we have H1 and M2, both of which want to pick up a cone. So once the clones appear, H1 looks northwest and counterclockwise and goes to this clone. M2 looks north and clockwise and goes to this clone. This ensures that no 2 players go to the same clone and fight over the tether. Once everybody's picked up their tether successfully, this is where we're going to bring our mechanics to. You can see that the player with the boss tether is positioning just south of the waymark in the north. The defamations are out in the southern corners. There's a little bit of white tile, like a crescent of it, that you can hide on. The player with no tether is all the way south, and the other 4 players are in set positions along the wall to bait the cleaves from the boss when it jumps. The mechanic goes off by the boss jumping, followed by the defamations. Then we stack for light parties while the cone players are more near middle, aiming their cones away from the party. Light party stacks first, then cone. Immediately afterwards, you dodge behind the boss because there's a snaking kick that's been prepared towards a random player. North should always be safe for this. And then the boss will cast Reenactment, and because we have loaded up our clones in these exact positions, Reenactment always plays out the same way. First the north and south clone, so a replay of the boss jump and the Chrono Cleaves with the south defamation. Be aware these Chrono Cleaves are aimed at the same 4 players that baited the cleaves the first time. Now the northeast and the southwest clone, so a cone and a defamation. Then 2 light party stacks we'll need to share with our clones east-west. And then finally, 1 more cone and defamation. So now let's actually play this out chronologically. The boss cast staging. Clones are going to spawn in. We'll get tethered randomly to these. We go to our clone just to see better where we're positioned, and our clones appear. Already, you know what you're doing next. Because from these positions, you should know what acting light party you're in, which mechanic you need to pick up, and which priority you're going to follow to get the mechanic you need. The boss will cast Replication. The clones spawn in, and once we see their mechanics, we simply follow the priority to grab the mechanic that we need. Just beeline it straight to your clone. Don't worry about where the tethers are. Go to your clone and wiggle around it. Your tether should just snap onto you, and if for whatever reason it doesn't, do a quick circle around the boss and it'll snap onto you. If you're the no tether player, in this case R1, just kind of hang away from any of the clones as well as the boss so you don't grab any tethers. The tethers will lock in place right around the time that the Firefall Splash cast starts, and we all run to our positions. First we get the boss jump and cleaves, followed by the defamations. Then we stack up for light parties with cones already in position. Wait for the cones. Dodge behind the boss. Reenactment will start. And we want to go to these positions in anticipation for reenactment. I've re-put the mechanics over top of players' heads just so you can remember what each player had. You can see the cones and the stacks are back in place to bait the conal cleaves from the replay of the boss jump. The defamations and the no tether and boss tether are out to the side. That's because there's one more little thing we need to deal with. Netherrath near or Netherrath far. Netherrath near is 2 attacks that'll be baited on the 2 nearest players. Defamations will bait these by standing just on the very edge of the boss hitbox and sharing it each with a partner. If it's Netherrath far instead, the defamations will go out to these positions instead, so they're the furthest 2 players so that they can bait their partner stack, and they'll share it with the same partner. The Netherrath cast will go off at the exact same time as the first clone replay, which is the boss jump and cleaves. We position, the first bit goes off, and now we immediately break into light parties, but these are melees in one group, ranged in the other, so that we can keep our uptime as the boss is going to follow the main tank. Now we get a replay of the cone and the defamation. We need to rush down to east-west to take our stacks. And then finally melees need to go back to dodge the final attack. Healers in range have already dodged it. And that's it. The next mechanic is Mutating Cells. This is going to give everybody an alpha and a beta debuff. Afterwards, the boss will cast Blood Mana. We get some black holes spawning, which will then explode and shoot out what we're going to call Candies. And let's go to the chalkboard quickly for this one. Alpha debuff means you must not take damage as long as you have that debuff. Beta debuff means you must take damage. If you don't take damage before the debuff expires, you'll get a damage down at the end. Each of the candies kind of do what they look like. Purple one's an uppy downy, orange one shoots side to side, green one's a donut, blue one is an out. The candies will always be in these relative positions, so green diagonally from orange and blue diagonally from purple. If the candies go into the black hole 2 at a time, they load up the mechanics 2 at a time. Green and orange first, then blue and purple, and they replay that way later on. First the donut with the orange, and then the out with the purple. If all 4 candies are the same distance away, they will all get sucked into the black hole at the same time. All the mechanics are loaded simultaneously, and when they go off all together, we're dead. So to deal with this, we can slow down some of the candies. We send the beta players out to do this as they need to take damage, the tank in the north, the rest of the party south, and the tank needs to take this with some mitigation. The idea being that by standing in the way, the candies will explode but slow down for a bit. Dodge out of the way, and now we've staggered the loading of the candies, so once again it's 2 at a time. So now let's see how this looks in the fight. Mutating Cells will give us our alpha and beta debuff. Since the alpha tank cannot take damage right now with their debuff, the beta tank needs to provoke. The boss will cast Blood Mana. We get our black holes, and the candies shoot out. One of these sides is fine. That's the B side right now, and that's because 2 of the candies are near, 2 of the candies are far. The other side is not fine. All the candies are the same distance. We need to fix it. To know which candies to soak, look at the side with 2 near candies. It's the green and the orange that are near. Those same candies on the other side, those are the ones that will slow down. The beta player's position in front of them, and at about 3 seconds left in your debuff, you want to be ready to go. Make sure that your 3 players south are all stacked tight together so they all get hit, or they'll get a damage down if they miss this explosion. The candies move in and explode, and you carefully dodge any other candies because clipping another one will probably kill you and then later kill the party. You'll notice that during this, your debuff is swapped, and now everybody has the opposite debuff, meaning the new beta tank needs to provoke. While these candies were going in, the only thing we care about is which one had the donut go in as one of its first 2 candies. This was the order for B, and this was the order for the black hole at D. Because the black hole at B had a donut go in as one of its first 2 candies, that's the one we're going to dodge to first. It's the initial safe spot. We stand north and south of the black hole so that we can dodge the initial attacks. The boss will cast Blood Awakening. Wait until you see the animation. and now sprint across to the other black hole, as it will now perform its donut. That's the dodge you'll do every single time. Afterwards, the boss is casting Netherworld Far or Netherworld Near, and this is how our new betas are going to take damage to satisfy their debuff. Betas, you just do what the cast tells you. It says be far, so they're going to be the furthest players. They can stack up in the black hole, while alphas hide underneath the boss. Were it Netherworld Near, we'd simply swap where the alphas and betas are. At the very end, your debuffs are going to fall off, and since betas all took damage and alphas didn't take damage, everybody should fall off just fine. The boss will now cast an Arcadion Flame, and while this is still another heavy-hitting raid-wide, at this point, you might need your off-tank to provoke. That's because we have a double Sobat immediately afterwards, and you need to make sure that you have the correct tank with aggro if you're planning to invuln all three. The boss will now cast Idyllic Dream. This is a hard-hitting raid-wide requiring heavy mitigation, will be transferred to a new stage, and thus begins one of the longest and most complicated mechanics in Final Fantasy XIV history. Idyllic Dream is actually 3 different mechanics in one. There's a stacks and defamations coming off from some boss clones, some other boss clones performing telegraphed AOEs, and then we have some towers we need to deal with. The stacks and defamations will also be reenacted later, so we'll group that together. I'm going to explain these components one at a time, starting with the stacks and defamations, so that we can then combine them together later and they'll hopefully make more sense. The boss will start with staging. Clones of our players are going to spawn in 4 at a time, either cardinals first or intercardinals first. It's very important that we note down which one we have. Here it's cardinals first. Shortly afterwards, these are going to spawn clones of our players in set positions. This is very similar to what we saw back in Rep 2. The boss will cast Replication and start spawning in clones of the boss now, 2 at a time, starting north-south and rotating clockwise. These are always going to showcase 4 defamations and 4 stacks. These attacks are always going to go off in the order that the clones appeared. First the north-south one, so stacks in this case. Then these 2. Then these. Then these. This pattern here, because there's stacks north and south, would be what we call stacks first. We also need to remember that. If when the boss clones had appeared, and the mechanics looked like this, because the defamations are north-south, this would instead be the defamation first pattern. Whichever one we have, remember it. Our goal for the EU strat is to load up our clones like this. Within each of our light parties, like we did before, it's going to be defamation, stack, stack, defamation. And when we're trying to pick up our tethers, we're going to stick to color quadrants. At most, you're going to go to your clone and swap with your color partner to be able to get the tether that you need. Immediately, we can also tell from our clone positions who are going to be the first defamation players and who are going to be the second defamation players. Back to the clones. 2 of the colors should already actually have the correct tether. In fact, it's only the players that are at the yellow and purple waymarks that need to swap this time around. They grab the correct mechanic, they'll lock in place, and now we're using the same acting light parties that we did back in Rep 2. I'm going to go ahead and mark the defamations just to make it easier to see who has defamations loaded in. Because this is a defamation first pattern, we send our defamations out. In EU, we send them to north and south, while the parties hide west and east. Defamations go off, and then everybody scooches in a little bit for the stacks. We send our second defamations out, and everybody scooches in again for the stacks. And I put the boss here because this whole thing is not only happening during uptime, but also during your 6-minute burst. And if I overlay the defamation AOEs, I don't love these positions because they make it really hard to keep your uptime. They also make it a lot more difficult for healers to heal in what is a fairly difficult heal check. So if you want to do something slightly different, give Uptime Idyllic a try. Same light parties, the only thing we change is where we take the defamations. We send them out to the north corners. If you marked the defamations like I show here, you're actually sending the red marked player to the red corner and the purple marked player to the purple corner. Everybody else can hang out max melee behind the boss. Defamations, avoid them, and you can see it's much cleaner to keep your uptime, and then we take the stacks in basically the same positions you already are used to. Second defamations go out, and we repeat this. This is way safer for keeping your uptime, way easier to heal, and if a player accidentally goes to the wrong light party or starts going to the wrong defamation position, way cleaner and quicker to adjust and fix it to save the run. So see if your group's willing to give this a try. Remember, this is not PF standard. You have to make sure everybody is on the same page if you want to do Uptime Idyllic. However you resolve that, reenactment is going to carry out in what should be the same way every time. Because we loaded up our clones with the mechanics like this, and because it's cardinals first, These are the 4 mechanics going off, so we're simply staking stacks out at west and east. These are going to be our actual light parties, Group 1 West, Group 2 East. Shortly afterwards, the next set will go off, and we're just rotating to get to the intercardinal stacks. These will always be at 1 and 3. If it was intercardinals first, we'd stack at 1 and 3, and then D and B. That's the stacks and defamations. Let's look at the telegraphed AOEs next. 3 clones of the boss are going to spawn in. These will always be in these exact positions, and they're always preparing attacks. The middle one is always doing a point-blank AOE around them. And the north and the south clones are simply doing chronocleaves. One of them is hitting the sides, one of them is hitting front and back. It could look like this, or it could look like this. Whichever one we see, we need to remember these AOEs, and so we put something in the chat like north add, side safe. Shortly afterwards, we're going to see these clones reappear, and we need to already be in position to dodge the attacks we saw before. Later on, we're going to be on small platforms. The clones are going to reappear, but they are not going to telegraph their attacks again. Instead, we have to remember what attacks they had stored. Here, I'll showcase them here just to make it easier to explain. A portal will open up, and either the north or south add is going to get sucked in. We'll see that one later. The other 2 are now going to jump to each platform. We need to pay attention to where the north or the south add, whichever one didn't get sucked in, jumps to. That's the safe platform, and we need to know which attack they have stored so we know where is safe on the platform. Shortly afterwards, the platform will come back to this, we'll have a chance to get across, and we need to all dodge to the same safe platform and stand correctly to not get clipped. Finally, at the very end, the add that got sucked in earlier gets shot out from north, and we need to dodge their attack as well. A little trick for this. If on the boss is safe while you're on a platform, on the boss is safe at the end. If away from the boss is safe on the platform, away from the boss is safe at the end. That's the telegraphed AOEs. All that's left is to look at the towers. The towers will take place on these small platforms, and we're pre-positioned supports left, DPS right, facing the boss, with tanks and melees near to middle for their uptime. Towers will spawn in these positions, and we get a bunch of meteors that will drop, and we need to know what each of these does. The fire one means don't move. Once it hits, you get a debuff similar to a pyretic. You can attack, but you cannot move without taking massive damage. The earth one means move, because a couple seconds later, there's going to be a twister AoE popping up exactly where your tower was. The dark one means aim away. A laser shoots from the middle of the tower at you, and any player hit will get a doom debuff. We want to avoid anyone but you getting this. Finally, the arrow one means aim opposite. That's because it's a knockback. You're going to aim towards the opposite platform, and be aware there's a twister somewhere on here, so look at where other players are and dodge towards them if you're uncertain where to dodge to. You may have noticed that 2 of these meteors are tricolored. The top bit of the meteor means that the players in that tower will get a light debuff. This debuff will do light aspected damage when it goes off. The bottom bit means you'll also get a lightning debuff, and you'll be targeting a nearby player for a lightning attack, either the furthest player from you or the nearest player to you. We get in our towers. Before they go off, though, the boss will cast Arcadion Arcanum, and all supports or all DPS will be hidden with a light AoE. Since this gives a light vuln, these players can no longer take one of the tricolored towers, as the light debuff they get will kill them. So, if any of the players are currently stood in a light tower, they swap vertically with their partner. Now we pre-position in the towers, ready to take them as I discussed earlier. After we land, now we deal with the debuffs. First, healers should as soon as the debuffs off, stick to your light party. H1 does light party 1, H2 does light party 2. Secondly, everybody needs to be wary of the twister. The middle of the arenas along the east-west line is always safe, or you can dodge to the B and D waymark if you're uncertain. Fire players need to not be moving. Their debuff should fall off right about the time that the twister goes off. Finally, we position for the lightning debuffs. EU strat is to use these exact positions. The only player that's on the hitbox is the person with the red near debuff. The players with the far debuff are going to be all the way north, max melee. The other players are positioned depending on what meteor they took. The earth meteor player is going to stand directly behind the near debuff player, max melee, and the fire meteor player is going to go all the way to the south of the platform, max melee. If positioned correctly, the near debuff should harmlessly shoot off behind towards the earth player, and the far debuff should end up aiming for the opposite fire meteor player. That's all of the mechanics. So what makes this so complicated? It's because this entire time, the mechanics have been happening in 2 different dimensions. Yep. All of the stacks and defamations of reenactment are in 1 dimension. All of the telegraphed AOEs and towers are happening in the other dimension. If we split them up into their components, the boss is going to be jumping around between the dimensions constantly throughout this mechanic, so the true order of Idyllic Dream is this. This right here is the most powerful piece of information you can have to start to learn Idyllic Dream. Memorize the order, know what's coming up next, and everything becomes some fairly simple dodges and adjusts. So now let's look at everything chronologically. The boss cast Idyllic Dream, heavy raid-wide damage, and we're into our initial dimension. Throughout this, I'm going to keep a running order in the bottom right of the screen of what mechanic we're on and what mechanic's coming up next to try to help you to get the order correct. We start with staging. The clones spawn in 4 at a time, and we note it's intercardinals first. So we note that down. We go to our clone and stand in front of it. The clones lock in place, and already I'm thinking about what mechanic do I need? Which light party am I in? We can also use this time if we want to mark the defamation players, just so that it's easier for them to know where to go later on. Twisted Vision will get cast, and we're going to get transported to the other dimension. Everything we just saw, all of our clones disappear, and instead, we're now getting replication with the boss spawning in the telegraphed AOE clones. They're going to show their telegraph, and we remember what the North Ad was doing. The North Ad is front-back safe this time, so we lock that in. We don't need to actually dodge these AOEs, because the boss is going to cast Twisted Vision and transport us right back to the original dimension. And now we prepare to swap our tethers. Remember, you are only ever swapping with your color partner. Boss cast Replication. The clones spawn in 2 at a time. And we look at what North and South has. It's stacks, so this is going to be stacks first. That's the last thing we need to remember for the whole group. Everybody is now going to grab their tether, so we need to have some light swaps. In this case, it's the red and the blue players are swapping to grab their tethers. The boss will cast Twisted Vision, and as soon as this cast finishes, now we're dodging the telegraphed AoEs. So we remember that those safe spots were down in the southern corners out, and we sprint down there to get out of the way of them. Immediately afterwards, the boss is casting Lindwurm's Meteor. This is heavy raid-wide damage and is going to destroy this dimension's platform into the new mini-platforms. We always go Light Party 1 west, Light Party 2 east, stand near middle so that you can get heals and mitigation easier. Heavy raid-wide damage, the platform is destroyed, and now go into your tower positions. The boss will cast Downfall, spawning the towers, and we can check what meteor we have right now. Arcadian Arcanum, and either supports or DPS are hit with the light AoE. Anybody who's hit with the light AoE who's in a light tower swaps vertically with their partner. We don't actually soak these towers now, so you can try to remember what meteor you have, but head towards the middle of the arena, ready for Twisted Vision, as we now need to immediately start to solve the stacks and defamations. Right now is the perfect time to be thinking, was it stacks first or defamation first? It's stacks first, so all players are going to be heading down towards east-west. This is based off their acting light parties, not their current light parties. Remember, I'm showing the Uptime Idyllic positions for this. First we stack, and now we send out the defamations. Second stacks. Second defamations out. After all this is done, Twisted Vision is cast again, and we're going to get the towers respawning in, so we need to rush back to our tower positions, remember if you swap. You have about a second or two right now to double check what your meteor was and positioning your tower accordingly. Resolve the towers. Asuda the dooms. Dodge the twisters. Wait for your fire debuff to move if you have a fire debuff. And then everybody positions ready for the lightning debuffs. Afterwards, we're going to pay attention to the telegraphed clones. The boss will cast Temporal Curtain, and now is where we want to be reminding ourselves what those clones' AoEs were. North Ad, front back safe. This is what I'm doing in my mind during this to try to remember what the clones had. Temporal Curtain is going to spawn a portal that actually transports the clone to the other dimension. The north one got sucked in, so we're focusing on the south one. Since North Ad was front back safe, the South Ad is side safe. We follow the South Ad to see where it jumps. It jumps to east, and since it's the sides of that ads that's safe, east on boss is safe now for the rest of these AoEs. We don't dodge him right now, because the boss is casting Twisted Vision, and instead, we're going to deal with Reenactment. It's intercardinals first, and so we head to 1 and 3, which is where we always do our Reenactment intercardinals decks. Group 1 at 3, Group 2 at 1. Reenactment gets cast, and now everybody needs to be out way far in the back, because the defamations are enormous and they're centered on the clones. Twisted Vision's going to take us back, and this is when we dodge the clone AoE on the safe platform, so we rush east and on the boss, as that's what was safe this time. Twisted Vision again, and now we're going to do the second Reenactment stacks. This time, it's going to be on Cardinals, because the first one were on Intercardinals, so Group 1 West, Group 2 East. Finally, the portals opened up, center add-in, because on the boss was safe on the platform, on the boss is still safe at the end, so we hide on the boss. One cast of Idyllic Dream is a raid wide to mitigate through, and you have done Idyllic Dream. Afterwards, all that's left is a double Sobat. This should be your main tank with aggro or whoever invulned first, because they should have their invuln available for this one as well. The boss will cast Replication. 4 clones of themselves come down, and they all cast Arcadion Hell. This is heavy raid-wide damage to mitigate through. Afterwards, every clone replicates itself, and they all start casting Arcadion Hell again. This is incredibly high raid-wide damage, so mitigate this heavily. Finally, the clones will replicate themselves once more. They all start casting Arcadion Hell again, and this is not survivable. This is the enrage of the fight. Kill the boss before the attacks go off, or it's game over. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed.